Hi, I'm Greg Frick with HFO Investment Real Estate. And today we're going to be talking with Ted Stark and Heidi McCauley from USI Northwest Insurance about some risk factors as apartment owners you should probably be looking at. Today we're going to talk about attractive nuisance dangers on your property. What would be considered an attractive nuisance danger?
So when you think of an attractive nuisance, the first thing will typically come to mind would be a swimming pool. And there are lots of rules and regulations around how to kind of prevent injury to small children or older kids with fencing and locks and signage and so forth. But things like piles of lumber, piles of sand, really any condition that's part of a building or on your property can be considered an attractive nuisance.
And so I guess, as an owner, I'm assuming I'm responsible for the safety of anyone that enters my property. Can you talk a little bit about, what steps can be taken to make sure, from your perspective, to make sure that, safety is number one?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that you want to be as an owner or a manager of that property is making sure there's proper signage out for, obviously, all the tenants, all the public to see. As Heidi points out, a lot of these are young children that it's focused at. Well, they can't read. So again, you have to make sure that it's applicable to them as well. So whether that's fences or whether that's yellow tape, it's really key to make sure that the public is aware of any possible nuisance out there that can be danger. Where again, that it could be back to the owner or the manager where they would be negligent in that. And mainly we talk about finished or completed properties, but this also goes to owners that have vacant land, that are in the construction phase, and then are, as we know today, that are abandoned because of lack of funding. And so it's almost even more important right now at this time to make sure that those are properly boarded up and huge signage out there. So again.
So if I feel I, as an owner, have taken all the measures, can I still be sued for a nuisance like that?
Absolutely. There's nothing out in the world that says you can't get sued. But I do think if you've kind of gone through the steps of identifying what you would consider an attractive nuisance, have you done all the things to really make it as attractive as it might be for kids, especially for children? Have you done all of the things that you can do without rendering it unusable? So, if the pool during the winter months, you can obviously cover that and lock it up. Nobody's, especially in the Great Pacific Northwest, but you're going to be less likely to be found negligent in an attractive nuisance case. There's, you can get out on the web, there's attractive nuisance doctrine, and it really talks about the legalities of attractive nuisance cases. And really, truly, there's 5 conditions that have to be met for it to really be a true attractive nuisance case. So there is some protection to the owner. Fortunately and unfortunately, litigation is common, but we've also put at least some measures in place to make sure that you just can't get a lawsuit just because.
And as part of your service, is that something you can educate the owner? Hey, come out to my property and let's do a walkthrough and kind of get an idea of hot points and things that need to be addressed, right away in the future? Is that part of what you do?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we have a full-on loss control engineer on staff at USI that helps our clients and our prospects out there in their risk management risk management process. The main thing that we're seeing today is documentation. Make sure that everything is, if people are coming onto your site, sign a waiver. If there is some construction going on, make sure they have a hard hat, make sure they're wearing protective eyewear. But, again, anything that you can, because you will get dragged into, a litigation. But if you have documentation that they've signed, that they were well aware of it, and that you can prove in a court case, you're going to be in a lot better situation.
So I'm sure, with our clientele, which is apartment owners, as what else are they liable for as a property owner, and specifically with the existing tenants, as cracks, lights, things? Can you kind of address a little bit of that, just kind of educate the, our listeners as to what, as a property owner, apartment specifically, what are some of those big red flags that they need to look out for?
Well, I would say absolutely number one. I mean, anytime we look at clients and we look at loss histories, it seems that they're really generally focused around slips and falls, cracks in sidewalks, or icy sidewalks, or anything that has to do with the maintenance of where you're going to see a lot of foot traffic, possibly out in the parking lots. You know, making sure that the speed bumps are painted a color that bring attention to it, so that kids aren't falling. When you get around the swimming pool, you're talking about making sure you lock up any equipment that's used to maintain the pool, any of the chemicals, anything that young kids could certainly get a hold of. Simple things like hanging floodlights in low visibility areas, in, again, parking lots and backs of buildings or between the buildings. Installing rescue equipment, which, you know, there's liability in and of itself by bringing things to help and safety. So some rescue equipment you certainly wouldn't want to recommend, but looking at areas, you know, that you could potentially maybe put ropes or poles or anything of that nature that might help in safety or rescue. And then possibly alert devices or flashing lights, anything that, if there's really something of real concern that you, again, looking at the population of your apartment tenants. Do you have a lot of small children? Is this really kind of more your 20s and 30s demographic? And that certainly can help guide the owner, and obviously leaning a lot on the property manager. Right.
So I was curious, on insurance companies such as yourself who offer this kind of coverage, what does something like that cost, and is it, you know, kind of per, once you do an inspection, hey, it's this property, this condition, and the cost is here? Is it kind of a blanket? How do you set up the cost for something like that to pay for this coverage?
You know, the one thing that we do, and we'll bring our clients, is that partnership with the carriers. Again, we're the brokers, so we're going to supply the insurance product to our clients, and then we're going to use, obviously, the carrier services, loss control engineers. But then what a little bit unique with us is we do have a loss control department. Okay. So again, they're going to go out, do the survey, give recommendations, and then really build a risk management program for our client. Granted, we want them to adhere to all the things up front, but it could be definitely a phased program for them. They can't do everything, but again, they want to make sure that they're doing everything prudent and maybe above and beyond that for their tenants.
Kind of to tag on to Ted's comments, the costs around apartment insurance there's a lot of variables. If you're talking about where you possibly just have one apartment complex, maybe it's 80 units, it's a garden style, it's built post 1990, it's a frame construction, it's 2 stories. I mean, there's a whole lot of building characteristics that go into helping us develop a rate. But I would say in the Pacific Northwest, you're looking at rates that generally range somewhere between $80 and on up to $200 a unit.
Right.
So that kind of gives you a general idea. And in that pricing structure, on your smaller property owners, you're going to look at a business owner policy that really wraps around, and it provides the property protection for the actual buildings, and then it provides some general liability protection that addresses the attractive nuisance issues.
Gotcha. Okay. And looking forward, I mean, what's kind of the, I guess, trend or things that you're seeing 2011 in the insurance on, specifically to multifamily? Is there a topic? I mean, I know this is one, but is there anything else on the horizon that as an owner we need to start looking at or, you know, getting ready to address?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing and the good thing about in the apartment industry is there is not a lot of vacancy out there. We do write a lot of property in our USI office, and on the commercial side, it's a little flip on that. So we're really addressing with all our owners to make sure their policies, whether they do have a vacancy clause, and that we're on top of that, because that can be a huge financial hit if, you know, that building, you know, is completely vacant and they only get a portion of that loss if there was something to happen. So just staying on top of it. Obviously the economy, we do feel is making a turn. We see some funding out there as probably you do in your business, but again, I think it will just be a slow, steady climb out of this.
Okay. And just for our people watching, what's the best way that they can find information about USI?
So certainly go to our website, www.usi.biz, and then I believe we also have a link on your website that can reach us as well.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank Ted and Heidi again for coming to talk to us. They are sponsors for our roundtable events, and again, they can be reached at their website and the phone number, which there's a link on our website as well to get their information. Thank you again, and we'll see you soon. Feel free to learn more about our firm by visiting our website or calling us directly. Thank you.